Da, 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 da. Hi, it's 1 o'clock. What's going on? Actually, what's going on is I just like knocked out my light, one of my many lights here. Uh, and oops, I don't even know I'm picking this up. Let it go. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. The show is What's Going On. My guest today. Wait a minute. Let me pull up the official zinger here. There we go. Karen Pinckney from purchasing agent level 3 in LaGuardia's purchasing department. Karen will be leaving us as of June 15th, and this will be her exit interview. Which has become one of the staples here at What's Going On. Kind of a compendium of all the folks that have worked here, sharing their institutional knowledge before they leave. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, sure. Sorry for all the acrobatics. Chris disappeared. You see how Chris just kind of like quietly left the show? He didn't want to take any responsibility for what was happening. So we talked about the format, and which is obviously very relaxed. But we always like to start everyone's exit interview by talking a little bit about who they are, where they came from, their backgrounds, education before coming to LaGuardia. So, what would you like?
Well, to say? I was born and raised in the Bronx, to Jamaican dad, mother from the South. I was raised in the New York City public school system. And then I was also a high school dropout. I went back to earn my GED at probably 19 years old. I started working in retail soon after that. I worked at Crate and Barrel years back on 59th and Madison. And in that role, there was a bunch of students that worked there that was in college. And I decided to go back to school and earn my degree. I went to Monroe College in the Bronx. I earned an associate's degree in office technologies. I then worked at different locations as a secretary. I finished my degree, my bachelor's degree at SBS, School of Professional Studies, CUNY School, after working at CUNY. My sister saw an ad in the Daily News for a CUNY office assistant civil service job, for which I applied to. I took the exam, started working in 2004 at Bronx Community College as a CUNY office assistant. It was there that I decided to go back to school, being in the educational setting. And back then they had the CPE, the CUNY proficiency exam, which everyone was afraid of. But I passed on the first time with flying colors. At BCC as a CUNY office assistant, I worked in the building and grounds department, which is a department that handles all of the operations for the campus, whether it's electrical, the power plant. I worked with the skilled trades, custodial staff. I did all the work orders for those folks in the department, and I submitted requisitions for them. I then wanted to know what happened on the end of the requisition process, which is when I inquired about purchasing. Requisition must be submitted prior to a purchasing agent actually doing a purchase order. So I was in building and grounds, I want to say from 2004 to 2011, and then I moved over to the purchasing department. I started there as an assistant purchasing agent, learning all the basics of that title, procuring goods as small as office supplies, pens and memo pads and calculators. I soon learned how to process credit card orders, and of course, all of the details that go with that. I learned about the city, state, and federal contracts that's involved with purchasing. And so there was an ad that came out back in 2014 for a level 2 purchasing agent here at LaGuardia Community College. And the ad specifically said they wanted someone who had a building and grounds background. Well, that was right up my alley. I knew about the T120s, fluorescent bulbs that the electricians worked with. I knew about the conduit, um, the stationary engineers who took care of the water treatment. I had knowledge of all of that information, so I decided to uh, put my hat in the arena and sent in my resume. Um, I came in for the interview and got the position. When I got here in 2014, I hit the ground running. I learned from the late Mitch Henderson, who was the purchasing director here for many years. And of course, my current director, Tawanika Smith. Um, and as I sent in some pictures, I don't know if you're able to show them, but as immediately as soon as I got here, one of my first large procurements was in front of the E building, the sidewalk pavement um, that needed to be reconstructed, which was a major accomplishment for me because that job went to a woman-owned business. We were mandated by the state, by the governor, Cuomo at the time, to do more business with small businesses, with NWBE, which is minority or women-owned businesses. And just recently, within the last few years, they added SDVOBs, which is Service Disabled Veterans. Um, so that was pretty much my background. When I got here to LaGuardia, I did continue and finish up my degree at the School of Professional Studies. Just being in the educational atmosphere with others who continue their education was something that made you want to follow. And you wanted to, just to learn more and to continue to grow. Um,
Uh, Maybe I can unpack some of these things you're saying, because by the way, you're like moving through all the subject matter. Usually, sometimes I want to say to people when they ask me what the questions are, I'll say I will tell you, but I'm afraid to tell you you'll try to answer them all in the first 10 minutes. And sure enough, it always does happen that people try to wrap it all up, and then I have to kind of like extrapolate. Here's a question for you. Interestingly, like, what am I going to pick out of a lot of that you shared? Why did you drop out of high school?
so in school, as a child, I suffered with asthma and I was always in the hospital. I had it really bad to where I used to be in the intensive care unit. I would be in the hospital for 1 to 2 months sometimes, and I would get out of the hospital, go to school, take my exams, and pass. And my mom's friends would always say, "How did your daughter do that?" We were also taught at home, not just in the public school system. And I think what happened was some friends of mine um, that would always excel at the top of our class, we got bored. Like nowadays, they have charter schools, they have gifted and talented programs for students that I guess go above and beyond. And they didn't have that back then for me. And I guess after a while, school got boring. You're always passing your exams, you're always getting A's and B's. And I said, I didn't want to go to school anymore. But once you get out there in the real world, you realize that it's important to have your education.
Oh yeah, you need that piece of paper. Uh,
Exactly.
Here's the next question. What was your experience of SPS?
My experience there, I have to say, it was a good one. So I didn't go into the brick and mortar school. I did everything completely online. Um, but the professors were really good. I remember having to take statistics over. It was extremely difficult for me. And I thought if I would have been in a brick and mortar, I would have probably passed the first time around. But I have to say that the professors always had an open door policy via email. And it worked for me because I was a mom of two. I am a mom of two boys, and to work full time and then to go to school full time in person would have made me have less time with my family. So at 2 a.m., 3 a.m., I would be up online submitting work. So that experience, I have to say, it really worked for the working individual.
Yeah, when you were talking about the asthma, and when you say you lived in the Bronx, you lived in the South Bronx?
I did at the time,
Yeah,
yes.
and so I know, it's not unusual for children of the South Bronx to develop asthma, particularly because of the Cross Bronx Expressway and all of the, of the pollutants that uh, conduit produces. Uh,
I grew up in a house right off the Cross Bronx
oh
Expressway.
wow!
Yeah, and I'm in the Northeast Bronx now. Prior to moving there, my son was in the hospital every year with asthma, so he no longer suffers from that.
Yeah, maybe all these electric cars will change that. But
Yeah, sustainability,
yeah,
right?
but it was interesting because I was thinking at the time. I said, like, actually, there was a time where the online ed might have worked for, like, while you were in the hospital, you could have been watching, you could have been on the computer in class. Uh, as we move into talking about your LaGuardia period, I just want to say the late Mitch Henderson is an angel of a program that continues in photography, the photography program, which was the Cameras for Science program. You probably know this as a purchasing agent that CUNY does not look fondly upon the purchase of used things, of anything used. But in the case
Absolutely.
of the photo program, we needed to buy analog cameras, which at that point weren't even being made. I mean, for the most part, I mean, you could certainly, I think people could still buy very expensive, like Leicas and things like that. But, for the average consumer, and particularly college students, they were looking at purchasing broken cameras, uh, old cameras. I mean, all kinds of issues. And so we were trying to buy like 100 cameras with some money we got from the central office. And I went to Mitch, and Mitch's first thing was like, "Oh no, you can't do that. We can't buy." And I said, "Can we? Is there something that can be done?" And he made it happen, and we were able to
Yeah.
buy those cameras. And then right after that happened, he passed. Uh, and so whenever we do exhibitions, and we'll probably do another exhibition probably in the fall because this spring we have too many things going on. But we always tip our hat to Mitch and actually Scott White from the library, because initially we used to have kids check them out from the library, and Scott White made that happen for us too. So there are two angels that hang over
Yeah.
the photo program. So let's talk a little about purchasing, because I got to tell you, people, one of the things around here, I was actually talking to my chair just before I came in here. We always talk about it's not easy to spend money in CUNY because
No, it's
there's a lot of
mhm.
there's a lot of hurdles. You want to talk about that? Like, why is it so hard to spend money in CUNY?
Well, there's a lot of policies and procedures that have to be followed when you're spending taxpayer dollars. Um, there are state rules, and then because we're a community college, we get our funding from the city and the state. Um, and then so there's that extra bit of red tape. But when you're paying when you're using taxpayer dollars, um, there's I'm sorry, I'm just getting a little nervous here, but
Why? I'm afraid
um,
you're going to say something that you're leaving. This is your opportunity.
no, no,
You.
no, I understand exactly, but um, well, even now on the NTL side, on the non-tax levy side, where you had a little wiggle room to do things, the rules are changing there as well, and they're getting tighter as far as with on the tax levy side and the non-tax levy side. But for the most part, anything over $5,000, you have to have at least a city or state contract or either a federal contract. If not, you have to have three or more vendors that you solicit to. As I mentioned earlier, which I know I was jumping a little ahead, the state mandated the campuses a few years back to add and include more NWBE vendors, which are the minority and the women-owned vendors. And like I said, just recently in a few years, it was the SDVOB vendors, giving these service disabled veterans an opportunity giving the small businesses a better opportunity to getting larger contracts. So again, when you're using tax levy dollars, you can't just go out and, you know, buy anything that you wish in your wish list. We have to make sure that we're following those rules and regulations when it comes to procuring those goods and services.
And we
And so
no, go
and
ahead.
so that's why you have those red tapes there.
Yeah, we were fortunate that the number of cameras we were trying to buy at the time, uh, you know, nobody had those kinds of numbers. We ended up finding somebody, I think it was in Georgia, who had you know, literally hundreds of cameras that we could purchase all at one time, because we would have bought, and I think we did try. I think we may have even used a women-owned business to move the, you know, to kind of as a subcontractor or purchase it through them in the end. But I can't remember, but it wasn't easy. Alan was involved. Alan Drexler, he was our guy. And I would, you know, you know, my style. I tell people all the time is like, first I send you an email, then I follow up with a phone call, and then I show up in your office. So I used to wander by the purchasing office and go in and say, "Hey, Alan, what's going on? How is it going?" You know, and
Yeah.
he would check in with me and let me know, "Oh yeah, we're this far, and it's going to do this next." And
Well, that's always the best thing to do. We always like to, for me, I like to put in a phone call and then follow up with an email. Um, you know, speaking of Mitch Henderson, I have to say I've learned so much from him in this career path. And one of the main takeaways I can say that I got from him was do everything in writing. You don't want to do everything over the phone because then someone can say, oh, I never said that. But when you do everything in writing, there's always a paper trail, right? And also, always put a second set of eyes on something. So if we're sending out an email, always get someone else to read it over prior to sending it out. And those are the things that I actually can use in my personal life that I can teach to my children. You know, I have friends who says, "Oh, I got this email and the person was really rude to me," and I say to them, "Calm down, relax, write the email up, and get a second set of eyes before you send them out." Another thing we do here in purchasing is whenever we get agreements or new software that's involving our students, we always have to send that information to OGC, which is Office of General Counsel. We're not lawyers, so we have to send it to our lawyers so they can read that terminology and let us know if we can proceed with those procurements.
so Maria Cook doesn't get involved with that. You send it straight to CUNY Central.
That's correct. And again, these are things that I've learned that I can take away from my own personal life when it comes to terms and agreements. I downloaded a phone game, a coloring app on my phone, and it had all these terms and conditions. And I started reading through it, and I said, you know what? No, thank you. I'll delete it off the phone. A lot of people, you know, are not aware of that they have to read through those things.
Yeah, I think that somebody, whether it was a joke or not, uh, had some app and where people would have to sign the agreement, and somewhere in there he put in something about like, and I own your immortal soul. And anyhow, so yeah, you better. Yeah, having said that, I don't read that stuff, but
Yeah, it's good to go through it.
I try not to get anything too funky. Uh, so we still got time in this period where we talk about your role here at LaGuardia. Uh, what's an average day look like for a purchasing agent? Because I got to tell you, I can get, you know, I know what faculty go through. I see my frontline staff and the things they deal with, and you know, various other offices, but I don't know what happens when a purchasing agent does.
So, as a level three agent, I work right under my director. So, a Monday morning, like today, I would pull what we call the rec run, go into CUNY first, all of the requisitions that has been submitted by all of the departments on the campus. I would pull that sheet and assign requisitions to myself and the others in the office. Um, um, we work with accounts payable, with the budget office. Sometimes departments may be short a few dollars and we have to go to budget and say, hey, can we get a few more dollars? This item was a little bit more. Um, we also do what we call RFQs, requests for quotes. If anything, again, is over $5,000, we do bids. If there's any services or commodities that's over $50,000, we have to advertise in the New York State Contract Reporter and the City Record when we're doing those bids. We do requests for proposals, not that often. Requests for proposal, you know what you want to purchase, but you're not exactly sure. So the contractor or vendor would come in and they would propose to you what they can do for you. That's usually on things like a cafeteria, things of that nature. So those we do, but not that often. There's a lot of multitasking in purchasing. We started years ago with the double monitors. So while you're processing an order on one thing and you get a phone call, you don't stop what you're doing. You pick up the phone, talk to that person. They may need you to just go in really quickly and check something for them. And so there's a lot of multitasking. Um, and I know people say this, when you find a job that you love, you're never really working. But I have to say that this is what happened to me. I didn't realize until my boys said, Mom, what do you do? What does purchasing do? And when I explained to them all of the specific details, I sat back and said, wait a minute, I do a lot. But you don't realize it because it's a lot of fun. You get to go to so many places on campus when you're procuring. You get to learn so many things. So it's really not work for me. It hasn't been, I have to say.
And what is your interaction with things like the RF or DASNY? Because you are buildings and grounds, so I'm guessing that once in a while.
So no, what happened was I came here to work with the building and grounds department to be their purchasing agent. But over time,
Right.
I've done things for IT. Just this year, I got involved more on the student side with College Association, which is the non-tax levy side, and procuring goods for our students. But RF, the Research Foundation, is separate from us, from what we do. They have their own purchasing department there. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, my only dealings with the RF were. Well, I did do some purchasing, but I can't remember how. Yeah, you're right. I probably went through RF to do it.
So yeah, it's just a matter of where the source of the funding comes from. So, mainly I work with tax levy. That's taxpayer dollars, and then NTL, non-tax levy, could, like College Association, could be students' fees. Auxiliary could be like the parking fund. So I know each campus does it differently, but that would be the NTL would be the non-tax levy, which is not taxpayer dollars, different funding sources.
So you're going to be missed, huh?
I think so. I've been here for a while, and again, I enjoy what I do. I enjoy helping folks. I enjoy doing things for our students, right? Because my mindset has always been this, right? In the wintertime, if you don't have the boiler up and running, I've seen when I was at BCC, students sitting in the classroom with their coats on. How can you focus? How can you learn when you're freezing, right? And so I feel like I have a part in that. No, I'm not the contractor, but I'm the person who does the procurement to make sure that we have boiler maintenance service. And again, now it's cooling season, right? So to make sure the HVAC systems are in place. And I always say, like, I like to be the person in the back, behind the scenes, that's helping, our students and making sure that students, faculty, and staff are taken care of in those aspects with the elevator contract and our lift. for our disabled students, right? To make sure that they're able to get to class. So those things are very important to me. Um, going on top of the C building, making sure the water tank, that we have a contractor for that. So, I mean, I think maybe in 2019, there was like a Legionella outbreak across the city. And so you want to make sure that all of these things are handled right. So there are priorities in procurement. There's times when we get emails, it's an emergency. I think we were home during the pandemic when I believe the M building had a burst. Water was all over, and there's emergency procurements that we have to do as well. These things come up, and we have to prioritize and make sure that we get things done in a timely manner.
Okay, it's 1:29, and the show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. My guest today is Karen Pinckney. And I'm trying to pull this up so I get your title right because I got it wrong earlier. Purchasing Agent Level 3. Nah, I got to go back. Level 3 in LaGuardia's Purchasing Department. And Karen will be leaving LaGuardia as of June 15th, and this is her exit interview. And so we move into that section of the exit interview, which I like to call your greatest hits, or those things that you feel the proudest of having been involved with. And you did send us some pictures. I don't know if Chris can make those available for us, whether I'm going to see them either on the Twitch screen or I'll see it on our Skype screen here. But if someone were to say, what are some of the things that you were involved with that you feel proudest of, what would some of those things be?
I would have to say, back in 2017, we needed to purchase a new cooling tower. That was actually for the E building, which is the building that I work in, and we were able to procure that with Major Systems Mechanical, which was a woman-owned business. And so that's the name of the company, Major, but that was major for me because I was able to fulfill that mandate. And the purchase was $750,000. We also had water treatment and tower modifications that was done in the same year with the same company, and which was $91,000. So as opposed to giving that job to a contractor that is a name, a household name that we all know, it felt good to give it to a woman-owned business that were just starting out. And so that was one of the major accomplishments, I would have to say, as well as the E building sidewalk pavement. That also went to a woman-owned business. And that was like right after I got here. I got here July 2014, and that was one of my first bids that I had to do. So they broke up the sidewalk, and if you remember the sidewalk that didn't always have the LaGuardia plaque and the CUNY plaque, which now CUNY changed their logo. I guess we're gonna have to get an upgraded plaque in that sidewalk. But that also went to another woman-owned business as well. Mamais was the contracting company. So those things, and there's other things that I hold near and dear to my heart. The boilers, the elevator contracts, our building maintenance. So there's a few things, water treatment. There's a few things, but yeah, I would have to say those two were like the major accomplishments. When I come into the building every day and I look down on the ground, I get to say I had something to do with that. No one else knows it, but it gives me a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're talking about those bronze plaques that
Correct.
are right as you.
And you have those pictures, yes.
Yeah, well, Chris has not posted them yet, so I don't know what's going on. I think he's probably like rushing, like downloading and trying to figure out how to put them up. He's like shaking his head and smiling here, but he's going to make them available in a second. Do you know, does this name mean anything to you, Sandra Wilkinson?
Sandra Wilkinson, no.
I believe I've got it correct. She's one of our trustees. I mean, I don't know how long she'll continue to be a trustee because many of the trustees were appointed by Cuomo and de Blasio. So many of them will be, eventually the governor and the mayor will, appoint their own, the new ones will appoint their own designees. But she's been on the board for many, many years. and that is her. I mean, she runs a women's owned business, and whenever she's involved, I think she's involved a lot in she's actually the vice chair, and so she is with like facilities and finance, which is places that you can watch and make sure that the whoever's doing the purchasing is going to be, again, like you said, a minority-owned business. So Chris has these pictures up here. So the first one he's got is this IDCNY. I mean, you can see them too, right? And
Right.
and
Yes. So right, that's the
the,
C building roof. That was a couple of years back when we still had that old sign up there. And I was up there with a couple of vendors or contractors to take care of our water tank.
right.
Um,
How many
and if he
gallons does
clicks
that
on
take
the
up?
picture on the right,
Oh, another. Oh, there it is. Yeah, Chris has got it here.
right.
Up.
So that's the water tank, and we had to do a contract to have the vendor come in and treat, do the water treatment and treat our tanks. So yeah, procurement is, like I said, it's a lot of fun because your job is, you're not bored. Like, you're doing something different every day. You're going into so many different places, on top of a roof, in the basement, in a boiler room. So and again, you learn a lot, and so it's yeah,
Did you
it's a lot of fun.
did you have anything to do with the LaGuardia sign there that replaced the IDCNY?
That I did not, but I did see like the blueprints, and I don't know if you saw my picture from my email, but I used the sign that they actually wanted to do, but we went in a different
The
direction.
one with the little A?
If you right,
Because I
right.
remember Mello, President Mello, before she left, she kept going on and on and on about, like, I'm going to get the little A. I want the little A. And somehow the little A didn't make it.
Right, right. Yeah, it's a lot of people, they said, I guess coming from the 7 train and viewing that, it's, but it's something that grows on to you. I guess after a while you get used to it. But Chris, if you could click on that picture in the middle, the very middle, the third, yeah. So this was the first procurement I did, the first major, because again, as a level 3 agent, it's not about procuring office supplies anymore, right? It's doing these type of things. And so this was the woman-owned business, Mamai's, that broke up that and redid the sidewalk pavement. And Chris, if you can go to the left. And that was the result of that job, of that project. So yeah, showing up to work every day and seeing that and knowing that I was a part of it was absolutely, amazing. And to the left of that, so that's the Marley cooling tower that we purchased for $750,000. And that went to a woman-owned business, and that's right here on top of this building here.
And so what does it do?
So this is for our HVAC
Right.
systems. In your office, you probably will have, like, I don't remember the name of this component up here, but just to make sure that our systems are, we have good air coming in and out. We also purchased the HEPA filters that we did during COVID, and we had to change over to those HEPA filters. And so I had a lot to do with the PPE that we purchased for COVID. Totally forgot about that.
What's PPE? Oh, all of the
PPE, protective, right? The personal protective equipment,
right.
The masks, the I'm trying to think of the N95s and all those different things, and hand sanitizers and things like that. The PPE. So yeah. And again, those filters were long lead times, but we were able to get, obviously, funding from the government, and so we were able to, building ops were able to revamp all of those filter systems.
Yeah, again, when people talk about, bad things happening, but good things coming from the bad things, and one of those, and I think the chancellor once said this too, which is that, as a result of COVID, the entire HVAC system of CUNY totally revamped And yeah,
Yes.
even when I would be working with the watchdog folks, they would talk about that. The fact it's like, well, actually, they're, we're fixing things that probably should have been fixed a while ago, but we didn't realize, until we started checking
Right.
every single vent in.
Right. And you feel the difference when you breathe. You actually do. I mean, especially, take it from me, you feel the difference in the air. And again, this is why, working closely with building operations and facilities, those folks make sure that, systems are running correctly, make sure that we have contracts in place, that we can call vendors in, whenever, there's an emergency or anything like that. And again, like I said, it's all at the end of the day for our students, making sure everybody is comfortable, and that they have everything that's necessary to help them to get their education and that they're in a good environment.
Right. So I think it's one thing I wanted to mention to you, and I don't know, when you came here, was Eileen Murray still working here?
I don't remember the name Eileen Murray. I got here in
Yeah, I guess maybe
2014.
Eileen had left. Her claim to fame, one of her many claims to fame, she was a person, she was with building operations. She kind of has the job that Evelyn has now, Evelyn Lomark, before I had it,
Okay.
and even before Diane Cologne had it. And one of her big things was she figured out this way where she called it the store, the CUNY store, where they would buy, because you were talking about office supplies, they would buy like a certain number of things that everybody would buy, like the certain like copy paper, certain kinds of pens that would be easily purchased and delivered within a period of time. But and I don't know if that was in place when you came on board. And I don't know whether we kept them in stock at the campus or we kept them in stock at CUNY. But basically, you could get it as quickly as you could get like mail from the central office, and it
Right.
was a way to
Right.
deal. It was a way to one of the ways. I think it also brought down cost, obviously, because you were buying, you're buying for 25 or 26 installations as opposed to buying for just one school at a time. And so the numbers somehow it would affect that too. But I would think
Right.
so. If I were to think of a greatest hit, just getting, again, when we know that the university and the built and the each college went through individually, as far as response to COVID, I would think that would be something that you would think of. But is it because we're too close to it, or that, or even like it's a traumatic thing that you kind of put behind that you didn't necessarily.
Well, yeah, yes and no. Well, here's a funny thing. Back in 2019, HR sent out an email, and I always look for these trainings, right? And it said Microsoft Teams. And I remember saying, "Hey, I think I want to do that training." And someone said to me, "Why? All of you guys are in the same office. Why do you need to do Microsoft Teams?" And Microsoft Teams has been our go-to since the start of the pandemic. Um, Initially, when we were first, and actually, here's something I can share. I was talking to a vendor up in Albany that Thursday before we the notification from Governor Cuomo on that Sunday. So that Thursday prior, the vendor said, take everything from your desk because you won't be going back to work next week. And this vendor I was talking to was up in Albany. I told everyone in the office, and people laughed at me, but I remember we went home, and that Sunday the governor came on, and that's when we knew we were going to be working from home. We started out on conference calls, and then we switched over to Microsoft Teams. Um, so funny thing is, whenever you see a new training come out, be sure to jump on board. Um,
I can actually. I don't know if I'd top it. And by the way, I still don't do Teams. I mean, I get things. I
oh
get things from CCPD through Teams, like advisement notifications. But I'm not a big Teams guy. I haven't been, and I would guess that a lot of faculty aren't Teams people. I think some of these, like Zoom became big with the faculty,
no,
and now it's big with everybody too. But here's one when. A long time ago, Baruch was they would do these tech events, these tech things, and I went to one and I saw a demo of Blackboard Collaborate, which was what we used before Zoom became so popular. Now everybody just uses Zoom, and I came back and I went to the IT. I won't name names, but I went back to IT and I said, "Hey, I saw this thing called Blackboard Collaborate, where you can do like a class online. And you can see everybody's face, and they can all talk to you. And can you train me in how to do this thing? Because I want to learn how to do it. And we're talking like 2 years before the pandemic, and they're like, "Oh no, we don't know how to do that. You have to go get." And then of course, 2 years later,
Right.
those same people were now doing the trainings.
Right. Right.
I'm like, what do you mean? Now you know how to do it? You didn't know how to do that. But
Exactly.
obviously, they
Right.
went through some sort of Blackboard boot camp at the time. And meanwhile, we had this tool. I think it's one of the things. That's one of the things about like you're working on teams, and so there's a lot of things that does. But most of us, I mean, I think the story was at the time that I think only 50% of the faculty had ever used Blackboard until COVID. All of a sudden, everybody had to use it. And I think there were certainly some people that still did not. I know some people who were teaching through emails, if you can believe it. And but again, it's like particularly with the IT stuff, we tend to only use about a fraction of the capability. So though like you said, those trainings are good, and you never know how you're going to use them. But we're in the last quarter hour now, and so this is now either you could talk about the future, or you know what? Hold on, let me open up my full Twitch. Now I remember why I need my full Twitch open here, so that I can see if anybody has been sending us questions, and no one has. So we can just talk about you and the future. So tell us about your future. What's next for you?
Well, I'm going to be joining Lehman College as a finance procurement specialist. I've been a civil service employee, provisional civil service employee for over 10 years. And reason being is that there hasn't been a civil service exam for purchasing agent in over 15 years. And so at first I was afraid to even go into this position since it was provisional, because I said if an exam ever come out and I fail, I'll get bumped back down to my permanent title. But this is why sometimes you have to take risks in life and just go for it, because I ended up being in this title for so long. But now as going into this title on a heel line, I'm looking forward to that. Of course, there'll be no more OT, but that's fine. At Lehman's campus, I can go back and continue my education and put my hat in the drawing for a master's degree, which is what I'm interested in doing. And I just really want to help out that department over there. I was told that they haven't had a purchasing director in over a year. They just got one who's been there for about 4 or 5 months. I feel with my knowledge and my skills and my work ethic that I think I could be a major part of their team. And so that's what I'm looking forward to.
It's also going to cut down your commute, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. The commute is going to be about 25 to 30 minutes. Not to mention, my husband is 20 blocks away at Bronx Community College. So, oh yeah, so that will be a big help as well. So, on my transportation.
What when you say I never heard of this? You're saying there's a lottery where people can actually win the cost of the master's degree or something?
No, when I say throw my hat in, just just to put in that application and just get started. I actually was thinking about going back to SBS and doing it online, but I spoke with someone who said, "Listen, you're going to be on Lehman's campus. They have master's programs there. You can do everything like a one-stop shop." So I said, "You know what? That's a good idea. That's something I'm definitely going to look into."
What are you going to get a master's in?
Probably business. It was my BS in business. So yeah, I probably would do business management.
Are you going to start a business? Are you going to become one of these people that CUNY hires that is owned
like a
by
consultant? You? Well, no. Well, I can actually help my husband in his business. He's actually has a maintenance business with his partner, and of course, can teach him all the ways of how to go about being certified with the city and the state as a minority-owned business. So yeah, I probably would be working in the background, or maybe I'll own it and be that woman-owned business that we talked about.
I'll tell you what, it'll get you another leg up. If he owns it, it's just minority owned. But if it's a woman minority owned, then you got two legs up.
Right.
It's interesting because you were talking about that now that the veterans are being moved into consideration. I started thinking, when they first started all of these smoke shops where they're now legally selling recreational marijuana, supposedly they were supposed to save a certain number of licenses for the formerly incarcerated, people who had actually been incarcerated by the Rockefeller drug laws.
Wow.
And so it made me think, wouldn't that be something if, let's say, you were, if you owned the business and you had been formerly incarcerated, if that would be a consideration that would bring you up to the top. Because I work at the, CUNY, the University Faculty Senate has a committee that works on higher education in the prisons. And, again, people do their time, they've served their time, and they're entitled to, take care of
Have that second chance. Yeah. Yeah.
Look, I would much rather pay some guy who did time to work for me than to have to pay if they were to end up back in the system again.
Correct.
And on top of it, what it costs for us to put somebody in state prison in particular is more than it would have cost us to just send them to Harvard,
Correct.
Here.
Yeah, we just did the power washing sidewalks from the C building all the way down to the E building, all around Van Dam Avenue, and that went to a minority business. And I remember speaking with that gentleman. He said he was from his ethnicity. He was Dominican.
Right.
He came from Dominican Republic, and he said he learned about the power washing during the pandemic, got all his certifications and did his OSHA training and so on and so forth. So he responded to our bid, our solicitation, and he came in and he did the job. So again, these opportunities are now afforded to these folks, and then some of them actually end up going to CUNY. We had a student who graduated from LaGuardia, a gentleman and his wife who have their business, and they're in the electrical business. So there's a bid due on Wednesday the 6th, and I'm hoping that that former student sends his bid in. That would be a great story even to have on your radio show as a former student who's now contracted by the college. Who knows? We don't know if he would send it in, but that happens.
It's a proper bid. So speaking of the show, we're almost out of time.
Okay.
To give you, because we got some music. I forgot to ask you about the music we opened the show with. Did you want to say anything about that?
Capital City, Safe and Sound. That's just a family favorite. I sing it at home. I won't sing it here. And so that's just a family favorite. My 11-year-old loves Coldplay and said, "Mom, you got to get Yellow on the show."
Yeah, I'm gonna close with that. I don't know if I know that particular song, but I've got that's queued up, and Chris is going to play it at the end. But and I don't know how long the cut is. I remember it being somewhere in 4 minutes. So I wanted to give you an opportunity, like any last things you feel like you didn't get a chance to say, or anybody else that you'd like to thank.
I'd like to thank obviously my coworkers in the purchasing department. I'd like to thank my director, the business administration office, my VP Shahir, my business manager Carmen. She pushed for me a lot and always told me about my strong work ethic, how much she admired that I always, even if I didn't know an answer, I would search and search until I found it. And so I'm going to miss these folks here. But we all, we need to grow and continue in our careers. And so I'm looking forward to the next step. And I want to thank you, Hugo, for always keeping the college community abreast of what's going on, sending out emails. You never really had any interaction with me. But just by seeing that, I just want to let you know, we appreciate you. I appreciate you.
That's good, because there's a lot of people that don't like me. So it's always
And I got an
great.
opportunity to serve on the college senate as well as an alternate. So that was a really good
Yeah.
experience, learning that side. So thank you so much.
Yeah. It's funny because when you were talking about Shahir, all I could remember is watching him and Ken Campanelli running for the Hunters Point LIR
Train.
train. I always see them like walking down Skillman very quickly, and maybe purchasing needs to get them a shuttle. But anyhow, well, I want to thank you for being on the show because I got to tell you, with the exit interviews, typically what people send out the email usually like the day they're leaving because they don't want anything, any kind of big deal made. Or I mean, obviously their friends know, their colleagues know within an office. And I reach out to most folks who send out that, and I ask them, and probably 1 out of 20 will either respond and or be willing to come on for whatever reasons. I don't know. And I know what's interesting too is that I don't know if HR actually handles exit interviews, but it's something I picked up when I was working at the Guggenheim of all places, which did not particularly have a great HR office. But the one thing they would do is they would bring you in and ask you, what happened or what, anything they could learn from it. I guess that's a good idea. But again, I just want to thank you for coming on the show. Not everybody does it. And again, you'll be part of the institutional memory digitally, as we always keep this. Besides all the radio station archives, you will be part of the institutional archive that is run by the library. So,
Thank you so much.
yeah, I just want to thank you, and thank you for everything you've done for LaGuardia, everything you did in that role, which, again, like you said, nobody really knows what's going on, but you're down there doing it, and you're doing, important things. And so for the rest of you, the show is What's Going On. And we've been joined today by Karen Pinckney, who's the purchasing agent level 3 in LaGuardia's purchasing department. She'll be leaving LaGuardia as of June 15th. And this was her exit interview. And I want to just thank the folks who've watched and listened, or will watch and will listen. And we're going to go out as we began the show with some music. At this time, Coldplay, Yellow, for Karen's son. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.